everybody. Welcome to episode 95 of Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. We tally forth in the realm of Middle-earth. Rings of Power. Season 2, Episode 5. It keeps getting better, Sam, in Season 2.
It does.
What do you think about that?
Season 2 is getting very, I don't know if I should say very good. I think Season 2, Episode 5, which we will summarize briefly in a second, is probably the best episode of the show thus far.
And we said that about Episode 4, too.
We said that about Episode 4. So you do that back to back, and there's a definite upward trajectory. 2 episodes a season does not make. 2 episodes a series does not make, but I will take the wins where I can. So we'll do the summary and we'll jump into it. Only a handful of plot lines in this episode, so it'll make talking about it relatively straightforward, but there's a lot to like. So here we go. Episode 5, Season 2, Rings of Power. Durin the Third uses one of the new Rings of Power to help rebuild the dwarves' infrastructure and bring sunlight back to Khazad-Dûm. The ring also makes the king greedy, and he dismisses a warning from Disa that they could be awakening something evil that lives beneath the mines. In Eregion, Annatar insists that they start work on Rings of Power for men, but Celebrimbor refuses to be involved. When Durin IV expresses his concerns about the dwarven rings to Celebrimbor, Annatar suggests that the negative impacts are being caused by Celebrimbor lying to Gil-galad about making more rings. Celebrimbor agrees to help make rings for men in an attempt to redeem his work on the dwarven rings. The new king of Numenor, Ar-Pharazôn, tasks his son Kemen with cracking down on members of the faithful who remain loyal to Miriel. Kemen interrupts a memorial service that the members of the faithful are holding, leading to a fight with Isildur's friend Valandil that ends with Kemen killing Valandil. Isildur's father Elendil is blamed for starting a riot and arrested. Elrond arrives in Lindon and warns Gil-galad. All right, Sean, let's start with the dwarves. So Khazad-Dûm, a lot happens here. What were the highlights, and were there any places where it fell short, any blemishes on this part of the episode?
We start to see the power of the ring being used by King Durin to open up those new shafts for light, which is a cool aspect of the power of the ring. We also begin to see some of the negative consequences of the ring. But, you brought it up. There's only 3 major plot lines, and we didn't get much of the Harfoots or the Stranger. So I think the less of that other bullshit from the show.
Oh, boy.
When you can remove that stuff, it makes these episodes feel a lot better. In terms of pacing, in terms of being able to see the things that you want to see. And the fact that this episode focused primarily on Numenor, Eregion, and Khazad-Dûm, I think to me, that's what made this episode so great, personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think you had the screen time to devote to these plot lines to really give that sense of depth that to this point I've been criticizing as lacking. And we finally got that with some extended conversations, some extended scenes, both in Eregion and in Khazad-Dûm. We spent a lot of time in Khazad-Dûm, obviously demonstrating the power of the ring, the reservations that some people have. We have the recruiting of these 6 other dwarves, and it's a little unclear if they're representatives from the far-flung dwarven houses that live outside of Khazad-Dûm, or if they're more local. I don't think it matters, as we said in the pre-show conversation, because it's not important that we establish who all those people are. And this is one of those things where when you do the work to make your show believable, we stop caring about the little minor details of, well, are those the broad beams or the fire beards or whatever? It's like, nope, that doesn't matter. What matters is the plot is moving forward, and the plot is the downfall of Khazad-Dûm, the temptation of the rings, the negative influence that they have. And they did that well. I really enjoyed the scenes with Durin Durin the Third, the king. You really got to see his transformation. That was great, considering we haven't gotten a ton with his character so far. Haven't allowed him to express range, and this was good.
They had another moment that they kind of stole where he takes the ring off and then has a Bilbo moment where he like swears he set it down somewhere and then
Yeah, yeah.
so like that's a
He kind of like
minor nitpick.
starts accusing Narvi of stealing it or something, right?
Yeah, and it's like, come on, man. Like, or not, come on, man. Come on, writers. Enough of this shit. And again, that's just another thing we can add to the list of things that they stole from Peter
I,
Jackson's trilogy. But
I really wish they didn't do that because every time it happens, it detracts from what's on screen. And sometimes what's on screen is not good to begin with, and this is just, dragging it down even further. But sometimes it is good, and you don't need that crutch, and you should just avoid it and spend and just do your own thing.
yeah,
You've already been doing your own thing. At least stick to it.
when it's bad and then you do those things, it's like piling on. When it's
Hmm.
good and you do those things, it distracts me from the good things of the show. So just
Yeah,
don't do it ever.
yeah.
What else do we have? We have the scene of Disa purchasing that round sphere stone
Geo is it?
thing,
It is
whatever
a
it is.
sphere,
Yeah.
right? It's not like a
Yeah.
geode. Right.
And we have the first signs of dwarvish greed
Mm.
when he learns about the tax that the king is putting on to like all purchases and all goods.
Yeah, 100% sales tax.
Yeah, which is
It's a little
driving up the
nuts.
cost. Yeah. So there's one of your negatives of the dwarvish rings of power. But then Disa's moment where she goes underneath the mountain, do we think that she in that moment sees and hears the watcher on the water? Or is that the growling of the Balrog from deep within? I personally thought it was the watcher in the water that we're going to
Yeah,
see in the Fellowship of the Ring, because they've kind of painted the Balrog to be in a deeper shaft with all the mithril.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it didn't make sense for this to be the Balrog, but I definitely think it could be the Watcher that they're about to break free here.
I could that I'm 55-45, 55% being it's the Watcher in the water because the sound that we hear coming back doesn't sound like what we've gotten from the Balrog before. And there's that big pool of water right in kind of closer to Disa. And I'm not saying it was in that pool of water, but to have that water so present in the scene reminds us that I guess maybe subconsciously, oh, it's a water creature that's doing this. Not that that's what's implied visually, but it could easily be misdirection. That's why I'm 55-45 on it. Either way, both of those things are menaces. Did we get any sort of hint at the Watcher in the water from any of the trailers?
Nope.
No, but we know we do see plenty of Balrog stuff, so it could easily be the Balrog. But we've already seen that Balrog awaken right at the end of season one when the leaf like falls down through
Yeah.
the shaft.
But that's what makes me think it's the Watcher because I think it's a diversion because they keep giving us Balrog stuff over and over again. And I'm halfway through episode 6 and we get a slight reference to a Balrog in this one as
Oh,
well.
really?
But yeah, to me, all signs are pointing to Watcher. I think it's what is it, a red herring?
Yeah,
Is that what they call it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's see anything else with the dwarves because that's really what it that's we're only talking about a handful of individual scenes, but those scenes themselves are long enough where
Yep.
we get to enjoy our time there.
It does. The final scene is Durin the Fourth, Prince Durin, going to Eregion to talk to Celebrimbor to talk about the issues of the rings and something that he's seeing. I think that was a good scene to include because it shows the distrust of Prince Durin with Annatar in
Hmm.
particular. And things aren't all going well in Khazad-Dûm, even though the power of the ring is bringing on some great things. And yeah, I'm excited to see where Khazad-Dûm ends at the end of season 2.
Yeah,
Are we in the downfall or do we have the downfall in season 3? I'm intrigued to see.
yeah. I mean, we have Balrog shots in the trailers, and it's just a question of will that be will we see the Balrog like go ham inside Khazad-Dûm, or will it be teased in like the final episode where the Balrog makes an appearance, and that's how we'll start season 3, and season 3 will be about that. And then I could also I would anticipate that at some point we're gonna get the elves, specifically Elrond, asking the dwarves to help Eregion with the army of Adar, and there's going to be another conflict between Prince Durin and King Durin about doing that. Specifically, I would imagine, well, maybe not only, but exacerbated by the effect of the ring on King Durin. Yeah, so I think good stuff at Khazad-Dûm. I had a couple of nitpicks, like with demonstrating the power of the ring and the king like telling them to, oh, dig here to open up a shaft of light. It was just I didn't get it. I didn't have a good enough sense of the geography of Khazad-Dûm because it seemed like they were like deep in the mines, and it would make sense to be knocking out holes in the deeper parts of the mountain that would somehow then lead to the sunlight. You think you would start in like the upper reaches, but that's just, again, I'm glad they dedicate screen time to the scenes of people talking and moving the plot forward. And it was so it's easy to overlook little nitpicks like that. Do you want to move on to Numenor?
No, I'm going to push back on that for a minute
Oh God! Oh God!
because I thought it was a fine scene, and they did show that when King Durin uses the power of the ring, he kind of pauses for a minute with his hand on the stone, like he's listening to the mountain, but
Mhm.
he's really listening to the ring, and then says, "Okay, dig here." And it's not like they're deep in the mountain. They establish that they're on the edge of the kingdom because when they break through, it's like a couple feet of stone and then they're out in the elements.
Okay, so then
So
what?
they establish that they're not deep. They are on the edge of the realm. A. What else was I going to say?
Well, can I jump back on that?
Sure. While I think
Because
of my second point.
yeah, come up with your second point. They have a line of dialogue. I think Narvi or Prince Durin objects, saying, "Oh, that's a foundation wall or something like that."
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Which to me, foundation implies depth, not being close to the surface. So like if they want to say oh, that's an exterior wall or whatever like that, we can't knock that down. The stone's too thin to support a light shaft. And he's like, no, do it. And then they do it, and he does it, and it's fine. No issue. I think it was specifically the use of the term foundation. And again, it's a tiny little nitpick of dialogue. So it's like, and
See,
I said,
I was fine with it because to me, a foundation wall, like your exterior wall, could definitely be a foundation wall. And to me, it made even more sense that the ring is telling him to, yes, it might be easier to get to the light, but you're also weakening the structure of your entire kingdom by punching all of these holes into these foundation walls.
right.
So to
But
me, it just established the evil nature of the ring to tear down your kingdom by listening to it for like instant gratification.
right. I mean, I think a thin wall that is described as a foundation wall, when you're talking about a mountain, just a conflict of terminology there. But again, it was momentary, it was transitory.
We should have saved that for Sam's pedantic.
Well, I think maybe we can insert
moment.
Sam's pedantic nitpicks into each sequence, although I don't have a ton in this episode, and that's for a reason, and it's because the episode is of quality. Did you have another thing on the Khazad-Dûm?
No, that was it, just the foundation walls. But now we can move on to Numenor, which had
Numenor.
other great scenes.
It did. The focus of this was the confrontation at the temple during the memorial service. Were there any other scenes in Numenor that really jumped out to you?
No, that was pretty much the only
That was
scene.
it, right? We get like the one setup scene where Pharazôn's like, "I need you to do something for me," to Kemen, right?
Yeah.
And then they show up, and
Which,
we have
Kemen's a little bitch.
he is, and
I can't stand him.
Do you think he's going to be a ring wraith?
No, I just really hope he dies.
I mean, I wanted Valandil to kill him so bad, and I knew that as soon as Valandil like dislocated his shoulder or did whatever to him, it's like, oh, it's not going to end well, especially when they're so deliberate about Valandil picking up the sword. And I was like, throw it in the water, throw it in the water, throw it in the water. And then as soon as he didn't, I was like, oh, dude, you're going to get stabbed with that.
But overall, great scene. I like seeing a Shrine of the Faithful.
Mm-hmm.
They're establishing guys that you really like to hate in Numenor now with Kemen, Elendil's daughter. She sucks. Our
Worst daughter
Pharazôn,
ever.
yeah. So I don't know. I really am. The problem with season one with Numenor is that it ended, and I was like, okay, why? So what? Like,
Hmm.
why would you go to Middle Earth to for Galadriel? Like, none of that made sense. Like, their motivations for doing what they did. But at least now, with the conflict between the faithful and our Pharazôn and his people, they're creating a really interesting storyline in
Yes,
Numenor.
absolutely.
And I'm really excited to see how it turns out. And I've gotten a little bit of taste in episode 6 of what happens from this scene that we're
Hmm.
discussing. But yeah, really, really intrigued. And the fact that it also happened during like a memorial service
Oh yeah, it really
for
undercuts the
those
evil
fallen.
nature.
Yeah.
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 The there was a scene with Muriel and Elendil when they're talking about the Palantir. And she asks him, like, what did you see? And I don't think she says it, but she is basically, I think she implies, did you see the flood or like the downfall of Numenor, the vision that she's had? And he's like, no, I see myself like riding away from the city or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then you look in the background and there's smoke. And she's like, oh, then it like her assumption is like, oh, then my vision is like won't come to pass or something like that. It's like two people can have two different visions of the same future at different points. Like, come on, Muriel. But I think what we're seeing there is probably Sauron taking over Numenor, and I would imagine that smoke could be like the burning white tree.
Yeah, I really thought it was interesting because we had two differing visions of the future. And I think for Muriel, that was calming for her because her vision was destruction of their home. His vision was there is hope that there's an escape.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was less two people can have different visions. And I think it's more she's confident now that her vision may be like trumped by this one. Like
Well,
the vision is changing.
right. I think it would be it is the I what I can maybe say is the theme with this is going to be don't trust visions of the future because one they may not come to pass. What Galadriel's phrasing from things that are, things that were, and things that may yet come to pass. Like just because you see it, like what Sam and Frodo see, or what Frodo sees is the Shire on fire, which we know is something from the book, like the scouring of the Shire, the takeover of the Shires in the books, wasn't in the film. So that was a future that did not come to pass because they were successful.
Different magics too. One's the Palantir. One is the
Right.
mirror of Galadriel. So I
And
mean, I don't think that's the same magic
well, I'm not
taking.
saying it's the same magic. I'm saying the theme of visions of the future. The idea is that you don't know if this is a vision that is true and will happen no matter what, or a vision that you could somehow affect in some way. And it could be the case
That's what
that
I'm saying.
well, no,
Like the vision has changed.
but Muriel's has only had one vision according to her description, which is the downfall of Numenor. Elendil
Yeah.
has a different vision, but those two
Elendil
characters
Elendil
also
had a vision later after hers. So his supersedes hers, is
right,
what
but
I'm saying.
no, but I don't. But my point is that those two characters are going to experience two different futures. She's going to die in the downfall of Numenor, and he is going to escape. And
We
so,
don't know that yet.
oh well, okay, in the books, we know that that's what happens.
Yes, but we're not going to say in the books to this goddamn show, like, because it doesn't
Well,
matter.
but no, but I think right. So I don't think they're going to kill Elendil, and I don't think they're going to save their Muriel is going to survive. the The point is you can see Muriel is desperate for hope. And that's why she latches on to the description that Elendil gives her. Because otherwise, she looks into the future and she sees death and destruction. And so it's understandable how she's looking for a different vision, but it wasn't one that was granted to her. And I think that's the thing that is going to be the kind of tragic undertone. Is she may be hopeful, and that's why she like stays on Numenor when Elendil says, "No, we got to go. Come with me." And she's like, "No, the future has hope." And then it's like, no, you're going to drown.
Or she buys them time, so
Or she buys something. It could be
so
something
they
either.
can continue the hope. Yeah.
I like setting up characters with who are ostensibly on the same side, but have, different ways of operating, right? Because then that's a way to get a conflict between two characters who are otherwise aligned, and that's good drama, I think.
The only other scene that happens in this episode is in Numenor is the scene of Elendil kind of turning in his sword,
Oh yeah.
which is relatively powerful because you have all of his troops and sailors that are around him are also being forced because they're all members of the faithful, and then to have him also put his sword away. And that also hints at the conflict between Valandil and Kemen or
Yeah.
whatever his name is. But we also have that scene that explains why Kemen kills Valandil because we have, oh gosh, Isildur's daughter, Aarion, is that her name?
Yeah, I think that's how it's pronounced.
Where she's like best friends with Valandil, and then
Mm-hmm.
Kemen gets jealous because he's got the hots for
Mm-hmm.
Aarion, and then I think that's just what leads to that boil
Oh yeah.
over, and it's totally a Romeo and Juliet moment.
It's great. I mean, this is like they did a very good job setting up these conflicts between you have got a somewhat something of a love triangle. You've got this Kemen character who, despite being a total jerk, is actually a good character. He's like living in his dad's shadow, and he's not a soldier. You know, he's a bully, and we see that, right? But he gets the shit kicked out of him by Valandil. So you can tell like he's a well written character, and they did a good job establishing the relationship, and it paid off in a
Yeah,
tragic but great way.
he's a nepo baby. He
Total,
sucks.
total nepo baby.
Yeah,
Hashtag
can't
nepo
fight,
baby.
gets his ass kicked, and then has to kill the guy by stabbing him in the back. Like,
Yeah,
what a bitch move.
I
But
know.
yeah, so he sucks. But it's, I mean, that's kind of what I said about in Game of Thrones. Like, you hate Joffrey, but that's to the credit of the writers
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
they've developed a character and the portrayal by the actor
Mm-hmm.
that you hate him. And I'm starting to feel that way about Kemen.
Yeah.
Very well portrayed by Leon Wadham.
It
I
just
also want him to die,
yeah, no, it's great.
preferably as soon as possible.
Joffrey's a great comparison because yeah, not a main character by any means, but an antagonist. Not a ton of screen time. Kemen may get more screen time, and I'd be okay with that because he is being kind of set up as this. I don't know if he could qualify as a heavy because he's kind of weak, but he is this underling, this lieutenant, a dark prince. If Pharazôn is the king, yeah, Numenor was good. This is like if you can go back to season one, sideline Galadriel, Numenor. We spend time on Numenor, but it's primarily focused on the conflict between the faithful and the Kingsmen, between Miriel, Elendil, and then Pharazôn and Kemen, and those dynamics, because that's good. Let that brew and develop to the point where then it's not this Southlands plot that they get dragged into, but it's actually the War of the Dwarves or the elves and Sauron. And then we have these factions. They could have done it differently, given more screen time to these two separate yet very compelling parts of the show, and then bring them together to heighten the drama instead of kind of diffuse it in season one.
Let's round out our. Oh, let me take that again. Let's round out our episode by talking about Eregion.
The
That is
Regian.
the last thing we really have. With this episode, I feel so bad for Celebrimbor.
You can tell he's under so much stress.
So much stress. The lies and manipulation of Sauron are in full effect in episode 5. You really feel for him.
Yeah. Similarly, with enough screen time, this show can be very, very good. The conversations between Annatar and Celebrimbor, and with Annatar and his assistant, her name is Mirdania, I believe, the
Mhm.
blonde Elven Smith, so good. And especially we talked about a little bit where Mirdania puts on one of the rings that's intended for the rings of men, right? And she disappears, like she goes invisible.
Mhm.
And does she like teleport to the top of the forge or something? Like she's on like an anvil or something, or like an anvil crashes. It's kind of weird, but it's implied that like they don't know, like she doesn't know how to wield this power exactly, and she's dealing with that.
Something, yeah.
something like that.
But eventually, Annatar grabs her hand and then pulls the ring off.
Yeah, and then she says, "I saw a figure here, like wreathed in flame or something like that." She describes,
Like his skin was aflame and
yes,
he had these burning eyes and all of that. Yeah.
yeah, and the idea is that that's supposed to be the true
She
form or
she sees Sauron. Yeah.
yeah, she sees the spirit world form of Sauron. But Annatar is like, oh yeah, that's Celebrimbor. And I haven't said anything, but he's not well, and I need to heal him, which is just like perfect, perfect. And she believes it. And why wouldn't she not? She's been duped by Annatar, and that's so good. And that comes on, I think, a similar in that same scene. He compares her appearance to Galadriel, and you can see that like that's a compliment that means something. And that it was so well done, that entire scene. And it was just one of several conversations in the whole Eregion part of this episode that just the writing was good.
I mean,
What
I don't
else?
really have much else to say because that was like the main scene and it was a great scene. I just keep coming back to I didn't like there are parts that I liked of the first three episodes of this season, but it felt like the first three episodes that they dropped on that first day were all just like meh. They were all just okay.
Mm-hmm.
They had parts that were great and parts that I hated. But now with episodes 4 and 5, and at least through the first half of 6, I'm on 3 episodes that I think are great. So if this upward trend, and hopefully the first 3 episodes of season 2 were kind of designed to be let's course correct season 1.
Mm-hmm.
And now with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the end of season 2, let's have this new direction for the
Mm-hmm.
show. And if things keep getting better, I will be happy.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else really in Eregion. One of the last scenes that we talk about in your recap is Elrond bringing the ring of Galadriel back to Gilgalad in Lindon and implores Gilgalad to send an army to Eregion. Previously, we had a scene where a elvish general is trying to convince Gilgalad to send the armies to Mordor, where they believe Sauron to be. So when this scene happens at the very end, I think Gilgalad has already sent the army to Mordor and then is now realizing that they're going to lose Eregion because half of their forces are split and sailing away. So I think that's what's going to happen. And then the very end of this episode, we have Adar pulling out Galadriel, and he says, "No, you're not a prisoner here. We have a common enemy." So a proposal for a potential team up to fight Sauron at the end of this episode. Do you have any last comments, Sam, you have about episode 5 of
I'll,
season 2 of Rings of Power?
I'll just say this episode so far has been the best. You said the first half of episode 6 is kind of continuing on that trend.
Good
That
so
is
far.
good. This episode, what did we not have? We didn't have any Harfoots.
Stewars.
No Harfoots, no Stewars. We had no Stranger, and we had very, very little Galadriel.
Mm-hmm.
And if this had been the show that we had gotten in season 1 and for the first few episodes of season 2, I think we'd be talking about a much, much different feel. That was not the show that we got, which is fine. I think you're right. The first few episodes were course correction. Can they continue on this new course? And obviously, we're going to get more Harfoots. We're going to get more Stranger. They're not going to just leave all that shit dangling. That's fine. But can we get more of the good stuff from episode 5 at the expense of the less good stuff in the further flung parts of the geography?
You hear that, showrunners? We want more of the good stuff.
Give it to us, and give it to us raw.
This was episode 95
95
of
yes.
Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. You can follow us on Facebook, Elves, Rings, Nerdy Things. You can send us emails at elvesringsnerdythings@gmail.com. You can follow our Facebook group, Elves, Rings, Nerdy Things Podcast. We have a couple more episodes of season 2 of Rings of Power. And then pretty much when this show wraps, we will be switching gears to season 3 of Legend of Vox Machina, which had a pretty bomb trailer that they released. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
I have not.
Really excited about it. But that is it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.